Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? Today is going to be Friday the 17th. It's President's Day weekend. Selfishly, I've got a birthday coming up on Monday, so that's always important. Andrew, you dressed today. You had your suit on today. You must have had a closing.
I did, in fact, have a closing. So I'm really happy for my buyers. They are an awesome family of five. They've been, working through the process here, and they're a great example of folks who it was a really difficult time for buyers in like 2021 and 2020. And, they were able to kind of leverage the shift in the market we're seeing to where we're seeing some more balance and get something under contract towards the end of 22. And now they're moving in today, right? So they were able to really kind of a good prototype of what we try to get out there and how we're leveraging this position of market to have some more equity and some more balance for people. So I'm really happy for them. They're moving out of the apartment and living it back into a house for their family. So I'm really excited for them. It was a good morning.
Awesome. That's cool. Good for you. And Cory, couple things. You're one of our newer agents. So we want to learn a little bit more about you. Also, we understand you obviously you're engaged, right? So you got a wedding coming up. And you just went under contract on your first transaction this weekend. So huge stuff.
Yeah, all real big things. First off, I just want to say thank you all for hosting and inviting me to your Friday thoughts. I appreciate that. And sounds like birthday's coming up. Happy early birthday, Michael.
Thank you.
Cool. And congratulations on your closing too, Andrew. That's sweet.
Thanks. Yeah, these are always good days, right? So yeah, I'm excited for you, man. Congrats on getting one of our contracts. This is right around the corner for you, And yeah, I'm really excited to kind of hear what you have to say today. It's been a while since either Mike or myself have been a brand new agent. So it's always good to kind of see that perspective again. And we try to communicate quite a bit. And I feel like we see a lot of each other, but I want to really to see your insight and how things are shifting here. So it's gonna be a good day.
Yeah, awesome. So go ahead and take it away, Cory.
Yeah, 2023 is a huge year for me. As you said, I'm getting married at the end of this year. So that's pretty exciting. And we just went under contract on a new condo south of Denver in Inglewood. So we're super pumped on that as well. Just kind of trying to seeing the hands-on approach, and really it's becoming very evident. It's really important to have a good realtor on your side, whenever you're going through all these steps. Some stuff is a little more straightforward. Other things require a little more explanation and help from experienced agents like y'all selves. I know Andrew's been super available and very helpful throughout the whole process. And anytime I have a question or something, it's a little needs a little more clarification, I always just bring him up and get some really quick answers out of him. So I appreciate that, Andrew, a lot. I know me and Michael, we talked a little bit this morning about handling objections on inspection and kind of how to go about that. And he kind of preached the importance of a home warranty through Blue Ribbon, and how we have a partnership with them and how they're really helpful with, all things home repairs and maintenance items. So thought that was interesting. Overall, though, the experience has been great. This is the first time I've ever purchased a home in Colorado. I did purchase a home previously in Round Rock, Texas, and there was a couple of differences from that experience versus this experience, but it's just been one thing after the other. The first thing we got done was that lending program. We shopped a couple of our lenders, spoke to 3 different people, one at Highlands Mortgage Group, one at Source Mortgage, and the other one was Supreme Lending. So we got a pre-approval letter and submitted over an offer on a home. I think we were searching for a home for 3 or 4 months, kind of back and forth. Danielle would primarily use Zillow and Redfin to kind of search for a home, and then she's sending me over listings, and I would put them in the MLS and see and be like, basically get more details on it. Like, hey, you sent me this listing in Zillow and it's not even for sale, or it's been sold, or it's not even coming to market until 2 or 3 months because it's a new build. So it's another reason why, a lot of people have trust in Zillow. It's a great program, but a lot of times there's a little more clarification needed, from an actual experienced real estate agent's end. So that helped a lot to kind of look at different things. But
Is there a good like application or something similar to Zillow that might be a little more, that has that usability but might be a little more accurate, that you could recommend to your clients or some of our clients out there?
I think HomeSnap is really, really prevalent in our marketplace right now. A lot of people don't know about it, and it's a little more intuitive. It's a little more like the MLS, and I think it's a little more accurate data, a little more up-to-date information on there. We also have an app at Windermere, which is pretty helpful.
Mhm.
So that's streamlined with the MLS as well. And that's a lot of real-time data too. A lot of that stuff is really helpful for the home search. So kind of using all avenues. I don't think there's any one all be all program out there. I think it's great to have a variety of different technology at your disposal and really use a bigger net to catch that fish.
Right.
I agree. And I think that's one thing that maybe perhaps some folks in the industry have resisted this advent of technology, as it really does, in my opinion, in a positive way, allow the public access to our data that was people in our industry can be gatekeepers of before, right? So you no longer need to call your realtor and get to get the book information to understand what properties are for sale. However, to your point, doesn't mean every app is created equal and everything's accurate out there on the internet, right? So you're an agent who I really want to commend you for really taking ownership of technology space in our business. What are some things you try to do to make sure that you're integrating with technology rather than like pretending it's going to do the job for you or resisting it? You've really kind of found that through road. So what's some strategy you've used to do that?
As far as the home search,
Yeah, home search, or just like your activity in the digital space in general, I think has been really strong.
I appreciate that. I think one thing, there's two folds, right? So we're using technology to help clients' interests and be able to provide them solutions to their problems. The other side of the coin is, as a real estate agent, marketing is very important. So with social media, I think that's a big leg up from how things were 10 years ago. And I think you can use social media to leverage your audience and be able to create a message that reaches the masses in a much shorter amount of time. Like one thing I've been utilizing is reels, short film reels paired with trending audio. And so don't take up a lot of people's time, but it kind of either gives them a little tidbit of information about something in the real estate process to give them a little bit of knowledge. And then it also provides an entertainment aspect. So it's more watchable and shareable. And I think that doing it that way has been pretty well. I think the viewership has been higher than I expected, and it's continuing to grow as I continue on that path. But that's kind of one thing I've been doing with marketing myself.
And I find it interesting. So 2 weeks ago, we were in Fort Collins for their forecast, and the agents in Fort Collins approached you about your video. I mean, I was like, holy cow. I mean, people are really watching it, even other agents, which is huge.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, when you introduce yourself and they say, "Hey, I thought I recognized your face," and then you look them up online, and then you end up being friends with them on the internet, and so you get to see them face to face. It creates kind of like more of a connection there because you're seeing the three-dimensional version of them. It's what one of the Windermere agents said. I thought was clever. But it's great. It's great to be connected with everybody.
So what's been your strategy for taking maybe some of these more complex conversations we tend to have as real estate agents, and not necessarily telling the whole story, but like creating bite-sized chunks like you have in order to generate conversations, right? So I think that's been a really thing another thing I want to commend you on is you've taken maybe complex ideas like the state of the market, some lending questions that we're going to stay in our lane on, but have to have some answers for in our business, and put those into small, like 30-second to 60-second tidbits to generate conversations. And I think that's been really great. What's been your strategy for kind of boiling that down to more chewable chunks, I guess?
I think the old adage, like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it, is just taking little tidbits, like you said, and trying to create the bigger picture. Because if you just blast someone with too much information, it just goes right over most people's heads. But if you just do a little segments that is really easily digestible, I think it makes it more helpful to the client, but also more helpful to the overall process too. But I think that's my strategy mostly, is being able to uncover the questions that most people seem to have on real estate, as far as what's the dark points that people don't really understand, or maybe they've thought about it but don't really understand the ins and outs of it, and try to make it very, very simple to where anyone can understand, and feel confident about reaching out, or potentially reaching out to another agent and starting the home buying process or the home selling process. So that's kind of my strategy there.
I love it, man. It's I think you're doing a lot to help people overcome that fear little by little, because it can be a scary process, but working with a professional like yourself that understands how this should flow, understands our current market, and can articulate the challenges that we have and some of the leverage points we have as well in chewable chunks, I think is really great.
Yeah, I
Right.
appreciate all your help too, guys. I think it's very helpful when we do our power hours and we do, kind of get together and have a collection of the minds and be able to understand where we're at in the market, because the market is ever shifting, as we know, and it's changing constantly, just like interest rates, but also other factors. And being able to communicate that to our clients, I think it's very powerful. Knowledge is power, and it helps them have more confidence in us and they have more confidence in the overall process too.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we talk a lot over the years about, we don't set the market as realtors, and we sell the market, right? And whether it's a seller's market or a buyer's market, there's the same amount of transactions that happen every month. There's only so many days of the week, so many hours, so many title companies, right? That number doesn't really change. It just determines on if we're on the listing side or the buy side. The other thing is, one of the things that Andrew and I have talked about numerous times is I don't want to call it disinformation, but there seems to be information that's not truly correct. They're broad social media posts, whether it's industry partners, whether it's our peers, whether it's the media, whatever it is, right? And real estate's very hyper local, right? And there are certain aspects of it that are incredibly strong. There's certain aspects that struggle. There's certain aspects of, even with the interest rates, right? There's a lot of arguments that regardless of where the interest rates are, right? There's, people still get married, they still have kids, they still move, people do pass away, people do get divorced, and life does show up for people, right? In a lot of ways. And at the same time, it's more about loan program and working with those loan partners. And as you're starting to figure out, there's a lot of people in a lot of those industries, right? There's some are better than others too, but also that's your team, right? So your lender, the title company, the home inspector, the appraiser, the home warranty company that you recently managed, that's your team. So people are, when they're choosing to work with you, whether the listing side or the buy side, they're getting a full team, a real estate team, not just Cory, if that makes sense.
That's great. I think if you said our brokerage has an average of like over 100 years of experience between all of our agents and our management.
Yeah, probably.
Very strong. And that provides confidence to myself, for where I work, where I know I can get the right answers and, from the place that I am, I go to at my brokerage at Windermere. I think that you guys have seen so many different aspects of a transaction that just kind of bouncing off some ideas off of you really opens up a lot of avenues to potential solutions, even things that, I know myself wouldn't have thought of, or even, other agents out there might have thought of either. So I think that's pretty unique, what we have going on here.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think we've got a great breadth from our agent population. We've got it awesome with our leadership staff, as well. And you're right. Between all of us, we've seen a lot, and that experience matters, right? And pulling from that history, at the end of the day, making transactions a win-win, right, for a buyer and a seller. So, right, so where they're smooth and people feel like it was a good transaction, they feel like really good about it, versus just slam it in, slam it done, et cetera, et cetera. And Andrew and I believe that we are in the people business, and the house just happens to be the product, but we're really not in the house business. Would you agree, Andrew?
100%, right? It's about maintaining relationships long-term with everyone involved in the real estate sphere that we try to build, right? So with agents such as yourselves that come on board and are, that we want to really collaborate with and help grow, with our title reps, our lending partners, our home warranty partners that we have long-standing relationships with, right? So we've really fostered these relationships so we can then deliver this fully baked product to our clients, be them buyers or sellers or investors, and they can feel taken care of because they understand the familiarity with the process and with one another. And then now we've establish strong roots in those relationships, right? So that's really what we're about, and I'm really happy that you've kind of taken into that philosophy as well. I know, and you as a business owner have spent, prior to your career in real estate, have spent a long time fostering similar relationships. So what role did kind of the relationship focused style of doing business that we have here at Windermere play in your decision to go into real estate, to choose Windermere as your brokerage? Because you again have a long-standing record as a business owner yourself. So I want to kind of see how that played into was that secondary, or was that a big part of your decision?
Definitely very primary. I know that I did a lot of research up front before I chose a brokerage to kind of see what kind of online presence each individual one has. A lot of people know about Caldwell Banker, Keller Williams, some of like the very nationwide franchises. But I feel like Windermere is right up in those alley with those bigger players, and seeing the kind of support that Windermere has from like our chief economist, Matthew Gardner, a man like him who's involved and believes in our organization, who's dealing with some of the big dogs at, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, having these one-on-one conversations and really able to give us the real story of the national picture is huge. And having our network of over 7,500 agents across the country, it's picking up a lot of momentum as, a lot of value-driven brokerage out there. And I thought it was very interesting too about kind of our back end, basically support from Windermere, how we have a lot of very good tools at our disposal, where a lot of smaller brokerages out there, they simply do not. They're going to be using Canva to kind of create their own kind of sphere, their own kind of like branding image, where Windermere, has a professional team of developers and programmers that's able to generate a very professional and a very good look for any agent that joins our team. I thought that was phenomenal. I know a lot of people out there, especially a lot of brokerages, a lot of agents, that's their biggest pet peeve about where they work, is they don't have that back end support, and a lot of it rests on them to try to create something that differentiates them or makes them unique to their client, where at Windermere, that's already provided for you your first day in the door, and creates a lot of tools at your disposal. And it's really how deep into the rabbit hole do you want to go? And I think it's pretty exciting to be able to, really dive into all of that.
Yeah. So Cory and Matthew were having a pretty in-depth Formula One conversation at the event. I need you to create some reels to explain what the hell you guys are talking about, man. All that was sailing right over my head with engine types and
we're talking about the engine change. The F1 Formula One car used to be a V8, and over, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, they changed it to a supercharged V6, and we're just talking about how the sound changed a lot. It had this very aggressive, very like kind of throws you off your seat sound before, and now when they change the engine, it's not the same effect. It's not as exciting when you're at a race. As you were talking about Circus of the Americas in Austin, and how it's a pretty big deal to have a F1 racetrack, and he says he frequents that place all the time. But that was the gist of it.
Wow. Is that something? Have you been there?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's cool.
Put your earplugs so you'll go deaf.
Oh man. So we've kind of beat you up on the business stuff. Tell us a little more about you. So we're in a Formula One. We own a business. We moved here from Texas. What are some other things about Cory that can help your clients understand, or maybe some other your agent partners that might view this, understand who they're working with on the other side of the aisle here?
Definitely, yeah. I think my biggest strengths I've found are my energy levels and my attention to details. I really enjoy fitness and keeping up with fitness. Who doesn't in Denver? It seems like every single person goes to the gym here, which is great. But definitely like the outdoor activities, camping, hiking, backpacking, snowboarding. Just the Colorado lifestyle. It's pretty exciting to me. I can't see myself living anywhere else. My fiance is a native. She was born and raised here, and I'm like basically my dad's dad was a native here as well. He lived here for 60 years. He passed away in 2017, but he was in Littleton. That's where my dad grew up as well. But they all moved away, and then I kind of came back, kind of reestablishing our roots again. So I
think it counts. Like how, like if your grandparents are born in England, you get a passport. I think it still counts. I think you're good. Yeah. Like it's like,
That's what I always say. They're like, well, are you a native? I'm like, well, my family is.
yeah, my family's lived here for generations.
Yeah,
Sometimes it feels that way.
yeah. Yeah, my grandpa was a chiropractor actually for 60 years. So he's one of like the 3 people I think in Colorado with I think it was like it's like a 60-year plaque of service. So
Dang, amazing.
service is real big in our family. My dad's in surgical oncology at Johns Hopkins, so he's really big into helping people as well. But I branched into real estate. You know, that was on my mind. Is, you know, it's a great service you're providing to somebody. And you know, as I'm experiencing right now with my own home, few things really hit your dopamine and endorphins more like real estate does. It's super exciting, you know, whenever you get into a home that you really love. And it's really special that people like us are able to bridge that gap between, you know, not having a house and then having a house.
So walk us through that process a little bit. Put your buyer hat on for a second here and tell us how when you and Danielle walked into this condo. I mean, obviously you have a wealth of information and knowledge at your fingertips here. What made you decide to take the plunge and that this was the right one for you guys to make a move on and start your family in?
Well, it's kind of funny because it wasn't really evident at first. We had looked at a few other places and we're trying to drill down, you know, what we'd be comfortable with to spend. And that was really helpful on the lending side to kind of get the figures all figured out. And then it became more realistic. And then we started looking at single family houses versus townhouses versus condos. And you find, you know, that if you can get a much nicer decorated condo for about the same price as maybe not as nice as decorated single family home. You know, our market's pretty competitive. It's also a little higher end as far as the medium and average sale prices. So looking at this particular place, it wasn't evident at first that it was like perfect. It was perfect for us because we had about 5 or 6 must-haves. And that list got smaller and smaller and smaller as rates kind of went up over the past couple of years. But we had a couple of non-negotiables, and once we toured this place, you know, we're like, okay, this makes sense. You know, here's how we could live here. Here's how we could do this here. And then looked at it once and we're like, all right, let's go look at a couple other places to kind of make sure we still like that other one as much as we do. And then we went back to that original property, looked at it again, and we're like, yeah, let's put an offer on this place. You know, this is the right spot. So it's kind of how it went down. We had our sister come out and look at it too. So kind of got a third party perspective and toured the clubhouse of the condo. There was someone walking their dog out that day and kind of chatted him up a little bit to kind of see, you know, how do you like living here? And I guess his daughter had been living there for a few years and she really liked it and kind of got, you know, his 3 cents. That was one of the big factors was safety. She wanted us to feel safe where we're living. And then kind of all clicked together and she kept saying, I have a really good feeling about this, Cory. I have a really good feeling about this. And so kept going to the next process to the next, put an offer in, had a counter offer on our offer, and then accepted that counter. And then we just finished our home inspection this week, and we are going to do a objection to that home inspection and trying to ask for a couple things that we might want to be addressed later in the future. And just cruise on forward. Our expected closing date is the end of next month.
Coming right up, man. That's amazing. And I think this is great. So this is, I think it's really easy for us as realtors to like forget that not everyone does this, you know, 10, 12 times a year, every year, their entire life. Right. So I think that you having kind of going this process now are going to have that experience and that recent knowledge in your mind. So you can really connect with your buyers and understand some of the stresses that they're going through, right? Because it's harder to separate yourself when it's yours, right? So I think that's going to really let you connect and have a lot more affinity and able to empathize with your buyers. So I think it's great, man. You know, we all do it. We don't all do it every year for ourselves. We just kind of, it's easy to forget. And I want to make sure that you take this time and file these processes in the back of your head, which as a buyer, so you can use that to help understand your buyer's side of things better too, right?
That's a great point. I don't want to ever forget how my nerves feel, you know, on each stage of the process. And I want to place myself in that mindset for my buyers whenever they're going through that too, and not treat them like another transaction or a number, and kind of see the human side of the, you know, emotional standpoint. I think that, think it's a great service to offer somebody.
Yeah, and we all need reminding, right? Too. I think it's inspection, since you brought up, is kind of like the tends to be the main pressure point a lot of us feel, and I think that sometimes as buyers, we forget that we're not buying a brand new home, and sometimes as sellers, we forget that just 5 years ago when we bought this place, we had objections too, and we'll have objections on our new home, right? So I think that being able to kind of navigate that and understand that we're all just trying to kind of be reasonable here, again, that's going to put yourself in a really good position to be able to have those conversations with buyers and sellers, right? Because that's a important part of the transaction that we all have to reach an understanding of.
Right. Too, and Cory, you mentioned a couple things. One is there was a level of emotion and the endorphins are running, right? And that happens when you're finding a property and you're trying to get under contract and there's a lot of energy there, right? Well, houses have energy too, right? And regardless of if it's a house, a condo, a townhome, or what it is, you and Danielle will make it a home, right? You will make it your home. And sometimes when we're selling homes, we forget. Sometimes people had their first child, they were in that home. Once they got married, they were in that home. Their kid took their first steps. All these things and emotions go down. And I think that today, our industry is very much created in transactional environment, right? And I think it's our role to remember that. And so some things we guys ask people is, what were the top absolute 5 things you love about this house, right? And maybe the top 5 things that were, okay, I'll have to change. It gives you a little bit of an insight, And then also, when we're stepping into it, what are the top 5 absolute must-haves, right? And then there's some things that are your nice to haves when you're a buyer. And if you can get them 7 out of 10, you've done your job, right? And I think that's what we can expect, and then help them navigate that process, all the way through. One thing that we talked about during our business planning, if you remember, is every transaction affects somewhere around 10 to 12 families, right? From the selling side to the buy side, to title, to inspectors, to appraisers, to lenders. All these people are involved in a real estate transaction, right? And that's about 10 to 12 families, right? So it's really an important thing when it happens. It's not just one side, right? Both sides have to come together, if you will. So it's great that you're experiencing that. And a lot of the things that we've been training and guiding and counseling is now starting to come together.
Yeah. I think that that's important too, because I think it's easy for us in today's market to lose a little bit of sight of that there are real people behind these transactions, right? Because we tend to, and you'll notice this, Cory, as your real estate career continues to blossom, that we tend to not close the table together anymore, right? And I get it, it's not needed, and I understand the convenience of it, and maybe it's better for everybody, but there was a time when, maybe the knives had to go back in your pocket at some point when you're at the closing table, right? When we get through inspection, we get through appraisal, we get through some of these more potentially conflicted situations. And now we all have to sign on a dotted line, shake hands, push keys across the table. And I missed the point a little bit when we were, the seller would tell the buyer, oh man, you got to jiggle the handle on the, backyard fence, so you just tend to not have those conversations anymore. Maybe it's me, waxing poetically, but I do miss that a little bit, right? So, I mean, and this could be a question for all of us. What are some strategies that we've employed to kind of bridge those gaps and those communications at the end of the closing don't tend to happen? Or how are we able to articulate to our clients, be them buyers or sellers, that while it might seem like this person is asking for a lot or is unwilling to give a lot, how do we make them understand these are just people on the other end of the line, and maybe reach an understanding? Because that's what we all need to do to get to closing, right?
It's interesting, Andrew. A couple of things. I'm sitting here going through my mind, and I can't remember the last time I had a transaction, buy or sell, where the clients were closed at the same time or even the same location.
Yeah.
More and more, seller may have already moved on, or they closed on a Friday and the buyer closes on a Monday, kind of thing. Or the buyer closed in the morning, seller closed in the afternoon. I can tell you in the second home market, it never happens. People are in multiple states. Sometimes the buyer closes in Colorado and the seller closes in Illinois, but the house is in Missouri, right? That happens all the time. But 2 things that come to mind. One is I've always felt that it's appropriate at the time of final walkthrough that it's okay if everybody's there together. I think a lot of questions get answered right there. I have found that to be very valuable. Usually that seller is in boxes. They got crap everywhere, right? Because they're moving, right? But it's what a great opportunity to talk through and, oh, hey, the alarm system works like this, or Andrew's right. You know, sprinkler system, this is how we do it. You know, just kind of walk you through those things. Now, honestly, Andrew, we're dealing with Ring cameras, we're dealing with ADT security, we're dealing with digital doors, we're dealing with Bluetooth, we're dealing with little cards down in a lot of places. There's a lot of little things that are outside of the normal scope that are little things that we kind of need to know. Here's the big one. When was the last time you actually had a garage door open?
Yep.
Both my vehicles have a button. I couldn't tell you what a garage door opener is, right? Couldn't tell you, right? So it's like, those are just little things that you set it and forget it to walk through. The other thing is, where you can, if there's an opportunity for the parties to close together, man, what a great hour and a half of your life. You know, you get to learn a lot about somebody, the stories you tell. I mean, I've told the story numerous times. My buyer bought a house of a very, very, I don't want to say famous, but I'll say famous individual that hosted massive gambling events inside the house. And very famous people in Colorado have been in that house. You know, $400,000 cars in the driveway, right? Well, we would have never known that. What a great story. And then my buyer who bought that house has this great story of 12 years of history of owning that house, of just a lot of things that happened, right? And stories to tell. And it was great. It was an amazing experience, right? Versus, like Andrew said, everybody's kumbaya when you go under contract. And then sometimes the horns come out at inspection. And then you got to kind of bring those back a little bit to get that into a smooth closing. So sometimes meeting face to face does a lot, right? Would you agree, Andrew?
I think it kind of puts a bow on things. It can be a little bit cathartic, especially in a situation where it was maybe a little bit of a ticky-tacky transaction throughout the process. Some things I've encouraged, and it's difficult on the buy side because of, you know, our love letter thing in Colorado, right? But on the sell side, I would encourage my sellers like, hey guys, just write them a note, man. Doesn't have to say thank you, doesn't say anything. It could just be like, mailbox is number 1234, you know, here's where the light switch for the fireplace is, here's this, here's that. And in my experience, almost inevitably, it turns into like a pretty sweet little note from the seller to the buyer that maybe doesn't go into the stories in depth as it would in person, but it puts a bow on it. It's something, you know, they get to kind of put their thoughts on paper and say goodbye to their house. The buyer gets a nice welcome into their new home. And it tends to, even in a situation where there might be a little bit of conflict of the transaction, everyone can walk away feeling okay, you know, and it's an opportunity for people to meet on a positive note, you know, versus having a separation be like the last memory being like, oh man, they didn't want to clean out the sewer like I asked or whatever, right? You know, so I think that's a good way to do it. If we can't meet in person, I get it, you know, if you're in Ohio already or whatever, but write them a little note, explain some stuff. And that's kind of how I pitch it, is like, hey, you know, just explain where the mailbox is, explain where the disposal switch is, explain where that weird light switch is. And it almost always turns into like a nice little separation of not only the seller from their house, but a nice introduction for the buyer. And usually everyone can feel pretty good about it. So that's a tip I've been using recently. I think it's been working pretty well. But yeah, I do miss that, man. I'm a nostalgia guy. So I do miss the exchange of keys and the handshakes and all that good stuff. Right. But
Great idea. Yeah, I like that. Definitely makes kind of the human aspect again, brings the human touch. Shelter at the end of the day is just one of our most basic human needs. So it kind of puts everyone on the same page. It's like, hey, you know, this is a new beginning for you.
So Cory, I know that you're new and you're growing and you're learning your craft. Do you have kind of, as you sit here today, do you have like a 1 year and kind of a 3 year vision of what that might look like for you in real estate and where you'd like to go?
I do. Mine's a little morbid, I'm sorry, but I know just the statistics say that most real estate agents will be out of the business, you know, within that first year. I think it's 80%, second year is 90%. So my goals are on that third year is stay relevant, stay consistent, do my daily tasks, you know, have a good attitude about everything and detach myself from the outcomes of it all, but really just be more engaged in the learning process. And I've been super hyper engaged on Continued education credits. I've already gotten all mine done for the year, but I'm just continually getting them going and scheduling more and trying to learn as much as I can, because I think that the sharper your saw is, just the better outcome it's going to be for yourself, my clients, my family, for you guys. And I think that's one thing that you really got to put on your shoulders as a new real estate agent. You have to be self-motivated. You have to have a hunger for learning the processes, learning the solutions, and don't give up your curiosity. Constantly be looking around, poking around, talking to people, seeing their perspectives, because everyone kind of does things a little differently, and there's no right or wrong way to do things. But I think there is definitely a wrong way to do things when it comes to not participating in your own knowledge, your own gaining of knowledge. So that's kind of been on my top of my list, is trying to be involved as much as I can wherever I can be, and just being a student and trying to listen and understand and learn, and just take things for what they are and add them to my Rolodex. I've been definitely amassing a large database full of professionals, whether it be lenders, agents, contractors, roofers, HVAC people, home inspectors. Want to be the quarterback for my clients and be able to have great people that I can call upon whenever the need arises, which is inevitably will. And that's kind of been my direction.
I love it, man. Yeah, and we've talked about it almost every week, man. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? There's no third direction. So if you're not pursuing something, and because this year it's real, is next year, who knows what it's going to be? What's the next thing we need to make sure we're on top of, or how does the rules or regulations or contracts change? And I mean, we've had, Michael and I specifically have had several contracts where unfortunately mistakes were made on the other side of the deal, and it put their clients in a disadvantaged position. And it could have been solved by just attending a class and taking some notes and staying focused like you've done, Cory. So I think it's great. I mean, this is maybe a slightly similar question, but you've made some great strides. You've made some, really not lift up the gas through the whole process. But if you could kind of put your, I just am about to sit for, or maybe I just took my real estate exam, there was like one or two things that you could kind of put in that Cory's brain from right now that can maybe help out some other folks who are considering making the jump or in the process of classes right now, could help for them. If it's like Windemere's phone number and address, that's fine. If you have something more specific you want to give them, that's cool too. So that was funny, guys. Come on. Yeah.
I'd say, I think every month completely changes what you know about real estate. But I think the main takeaway I realize is that getting your real estate license is really pretty easy compared to almost any other occupation or licensure process. The fees are relatively low. The education is relatively low hours. It's pretty quick. A lot of people can do it online. So I think the biggest takeaway is, after you finish your licensing, as far as finishing your school and finishing your board exams, and you become officially a licensed agent, I think that's when the training really starts. And that's when you really are going to start learning, what it means to be a good agent. And everything you've learned up to that point is kind of irrelevant. You're gonna learn a lot of things that you're actually going to be using day to day from that point forward. And another thing I miscalculated a little bit, which I think is important to know, is that it's not expensive to become a realtor, it's expensive to be a realtor. So just understand that whenever you actually get going, there are expenses as far as your brokerage dues. Maybe you need to pay for some marketing here and there. Maybe you need new attire. Maybe you have to upgrade your car. Maybe there are different expenses you might need to incur that you're not really aware of until the time comes. Also, association fees are relatively expensive, and those occur every year. So I think that's a big thing that people overlook is kind of go into it knowing that this is a business and I need to invest in my business. And the more you do that, the better your dividends will be, and the better your client experience will be with you. And I think that you can't overlook that aspect of it.
100%, man. Sage advice. Well, was there any other question you have for us or anything you want to leave us with here before we wrap up Fun Fact Friday?
How long have you guys known each other?
Oof, 8 years?
About 8 years, yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, Michael's, I have been lucky enough to have Michael be my mentor since I first got in the business, so, yeah. So if I ever mess up, please contact his SEO person, not mine, or his, in person, not mine, because he taught me land.
I think
Well,
you guys work really well together. You're like yin and yang of each other for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's a really good point. I think, Andrew and I have our strengths, and I think, and we leverage those the right way. And I've told Andrew this numerous times. I learn something from him every day, right? There's just something I learn. I look at it from different angles sometimes. And I think I try to do that with all of our agents, right? I think all of you bring a level of knowledge and skill set and perspective to our business, right? And how do we tweak here and tweak there, and how do we learn from that and grow? So I definitely appreciate that. Thank you.
Really.
cool.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, before you get out of here, where's the best way for everyone to connect with you so they can start engaging with you in some of these social media efforts that you're making?
Definitely. So my handle is at Colorado Cory Homes. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm on TikTok. You can just send me a text message. Sometimes it's easier. My number is 720-515-9185.
Awesome.
Love it, guys. Well, thanks so much, Cory, for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we'll get you back on here next year when you've crushed like 10, 15 deals. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Cory.
No problem. Bye.